Elena Brooks tightened her grip on her carry-on bag as she stared up at the glowing departure board at Heathrow Airport, the hum of travelers echoing around her like background music to the day she'd been waiting for. Her heart fluttered with excitement, not fear. Today, she and her 17-year-old son, Liam, were flying to Santorini to surprise her husband, David, who was supposedly there on a short business trip. The trip had been his idea, a quick meeting with European investors, he'd said, a chance to expand his architectural firm, Brooks and Associates. But deep down, Elena had missed him terribly during those 2 long weeks apart. They had been married for 19 years, and even after all that time, she still found herself glancing at her phone for his messages, replaying his voice notes, smiling at his old jokes. David always had a way of making her feel like the only woman in the room, and she couldn't wait to see the look on his face when she and Liam walked through that villa door unannounced. "Mom, are you sure this is a good idea?" Liam asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and quiet skepticism. He stood beside her, tall and lean, his dark hair falling over thoughtful eyes that mirrored hers. Elena laughed lightly, brushing off his concern. "Of course it is, sweetheart. Your dad'll be thrilled. You know how he misses us when he travels." She tried to sound cheerful, but there was a tiny tremor in her voice, a hint of nervous anticipation she couldn't quite hide. Liam tilted his head, studying her. "He's been gone longer than usual this time," he said, scrolling absently through his phone. "He used to video call every night. You don't think he's, too busy for us now?" His words stung, but Elena forced a smile. "Don't be silly, honey. He's working hard for us, that's all." The loudspeaker crackled overhead, announcing a 30-minute delay for their flight to Greece. Elena didn't mind. A few more minutes wouldn't change the magic of her plan. She imagined David's face lighting up, the shock first, then that boyish grin she fell in love with. He'd drop everything, pull her into his arms, maybe even shed a tear. They'd spend his birthday by the sea, laugh like they used to, and everything would feel whole again. As they sat near the gate, Elena's mind wandered back through the years. She remembered meeting David at an art gallery opening in London. She'd been working as a literature teacher. He was the ambitious young architect giving a talk on design and emotion. His confidence drew her in, but it was his charm, the way he listened, really listened, that made her believe he was different. Within a year, they were married. When Liam was born, David built their first home himself, brick by brick, calling it his love project. He said family was the foundation of everything, and Elena believed every word. To the world, David Brooks was the definition of success. Handsome, articulate, always in tailored suits. Magazines wrote about him as the architect of integrity. He spoke in interviews about loyalty, balance, and the importance of home. "My wife Elena keeps me grounded," he once told a reporter, smiling at the camera. "And my son Liam reminds me every day what kind of man I want to be." Those words replayed in Elena's mind now, like a warm melody that drowned out any doubt. But if Elena had been more attentive, she might have noticed the subtle changes. The unanswered calls, the late-night meetings that stretched into early mornings, the perfume she didn't own lingering faintly on his jackets. She'd brushed it all aside, convincing herself that love was trust, and trust meant not questioning too much. Gate B12, the announcement echoed. Elena rose, adjusting the strap of her purse, feeling that nervous excitement bubbling again. Liam followed quietly, his expression unreadable. As they walked down the jet bridge, she glanced at him and said softly, "When he sees us, it'll be worth it." He didn't answer, only gave a small nod, slipping his headphones in, pretending to drown in music. But his mind wasn't calm. Something in his gut whispered that this trip wouldn't end the way his mother hoped. Hours later, as the plane lifted above the clouds, Alina gazed out the window, her reflection overlapping with the vast blue sky. She smiled, whispering under her breath, "Happy early birthday, my love." She couldn't see Liam glance towards her with quiet concern, nor could she hear the small sigh he let out as he scrolled through a message from one of his friends who'd seen something on social media. A photo of his father in Greece, laughing at dinner with someone who looked disturbingly familiar. He locked his phone, deciding not to say a word. Not yet. He didn't want to believe what he saw. And Alina? She sat beside him, lost in her own hopeful dream, unaware that this journey, meant to bring her family closer, would soon destroy everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the people she trusted most. The wheels of the plane screeched against the Santorini runway, jolting Elena from a dream she barely remembered. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the warmth of the Greek sunlight flooding through the window reminded her. She smiled, brushing her fingers through her hair and turning to her son. "Wake up, Liam. We're here." He blinked, groggy and quiet, pulling out his earbuds as the flight attendants began their practiced chorus of farewells. Elena's heart fluttered again, that same mix of nerves and excitement she'd carried since London. It felt like the beginning of a story she already knew the ending to, a happy one. Outside, the heat wrapped around them like silk. The scent of salt, sunscreen, and blooming hibiscus filled the air. The taxi driver who met them at the curb was friendly, all wide smiles and fast Greek, tossing their suitcases into the trunk with easy charm. Elena leaned back against the seat as they drove along the coast, the Aegean glittering to their right. "Can you believe how beautiful it is?" she said. Liam nodded without looking up from his phone. He was scrolling through messages again, deleting something before she could glimpse it. "It's nice," he murmured, the word flat. Elena didn't notice. She was lost in her thoughts of David. She pictured him on the terrace of their rented villa, sketching ideas in one of his notebooks, coffee steaming beside him, sunlight glinting off his wedding ring. She could almost hear his voice, low, calm, telling her she overthinks too much, that everything will always be okay. He had a way of making ordinary words sound like promises. "You'll see," she whispered, half to herself. "He'll be so happy we came." The road wound higher into the hills. Villas appeared, white walls, blue roofs, bougainvillea tumbling down balconies. Their driver slowed near one perched on the cliff's edge, where stone steps led down toward a hidden beach. "Villa de Lassa," he announced. Elena gasped softly. It was even more perfect than the photos online. She imagined David choosing this place. Private, serene, the kind of spot where a man could clear his mind before a big project. She paid the driver, thanked him warmly, and stood for a moment in the sunlight, taking it all in. Liam was already pulling our luggage toward the entrance. "Mom, I'll get the door," he said. Trying the handle, it didn't budge. "Locked." He knocked, then rang the small bronze bell beside the gate. From somewhere inside came the faint sound of music, soft, rhythmic, something jazzy. Elena's heart fluttered again, that same mix of nerves and excitement she'd carried since London. It felt like the beginning of a story she already knew the ending to, a happy one. The gate clicked open, revealing a stone pathway lined with olive trees. The air smelled of lemon and salt. Elena's pulse quickened with every step. "He's going to be so shocked," she whispered, laughing under her breath. Liam followed behind, his eyes scanning the villa's windows. Something about the half-closed curtains and the muffled laughter floating from inside tightened his stomach. "Mom, maybe we should call first, just in case," he muttered. But she waved him off, already climbing the stairs toward the terrace. Through the open sliding doors, she caught a glimpse of the living room. 2 glasses of wine on the table, a silk scarf draped over the couch. A woman's scarf. Elena's steps slowed, confusion flickering across her face. "Maybe the cleaning lady forgot it," she said quickly, as if to reassure herself. Liam didn't answer. His jaw clenched. The tiny voice that had warned him for days grew louder now, pounding in his chest. Then came the laugh, light, familiar, unmistakably feminine. Elena froze. The sound floated down from upstairs, followed by a man's voice she knew better than her own. David. Her hand trembled as she turned to her son. "Stay here," she whispered, though her own feet were already moving. She climbed the staircase one careful step at a time, her heart slamming against her ribs. Each creak of the wood sounded like thunder in her ears. Liam followed silently, a few steps behind, phone in hand, instinctively pressing record, though he didn't know why. At the top of the stairs, sunlight spilled from a half-open bedroom door. Elena reached for the handle, hesitated, and pushed. The world stopped. Inside, tangled in white sheets, were David and Sophie, her younger sister, the one who had always been spontaneous and charming, the one Elena had defended when others called her reckless. For a second, Elena couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred, her knees almost buckled. Sophie gasped, clutching the blanket to her chest, stammering something meaningless. David turned, his face draining of color. "Elena, wait, it's not—" The words hit like shards of glass. Liam's voice came from the doorway, low and shaking. "Don't," he said. "Don't. Don't say anything." He was shaking, phone still recording, eyes burning with disbelief and fury. "How could you?" he whispered. David started to rise, but the look on his son's face stopped him cold. Elena stumbled backwards, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. She wanted to scream, to cry, to hit something, but her body refused to move. All she could do was stare at the man she had loved for nearly 2 decades, and the sister who had once held her hand through heartbreaks. The silence stretched until it was unbearable. Then Sophie muttered, "Elena, please." "Don't," Elena said, her voice so quiet it almost wasn't hers. She turned away, gripping the wall for balance. Her whole life felt like it was sliding out from under her. Liam stepped forward, taking her mother's arm gently. "Come on," he said, steady but trembling. "We're leaving." David reached for them, desperate. "Elena, please, I can explain." She looked back just once. "You already did." Then she and her son walked out, leaving behind the echo of everything that had been good. Downstairs, the music kept playing, cheerful and wrong, as they stepped into the blinding sunlight. Elena's tears finally came, hard and unrestrained. Liam wrapped an arm around her shoulders. For the first time in his life, he felt older than his age, responsible for protecting the woman who had always protected him. Neither of them spoke during the ride to the hotel. The island's beauty blurred past the windows, meaningless now. In her mind, Elena replayed the scene over and over, trying to rewrite it, to wake up from it. But she couldn't. And beside him, Liam stared out the window, his jaw tight, eyes hollow, already thinking not of what they'd lost, but of what he would do next. The night that followed felt endless. Elena sat on the small balcony of their hotel room, wrapped in a shawl she didn't remember packing. The sea stretched out before her, calm and glittering, mocking her chaos. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again, the sheets, the wine glasses, her sister's trembling face. The same question replayed in her mind like a broken record. Why? Inside, Liam sat in silence at the small desk, his phone on the table in front of him. The screen glowed faintly, showing the frozen image of David and Sophie caught mid-betrayal. He'd watched the recording 3 times, each one burning hotter in his chest. His mother didn't know he had it yet. Part of him wasn't sure why he'd kept it. Maybe to remind himself that what happened was real. Or maybe because deep down, he already knew what he wanted to do with it. Elena finally spoke, her voice breaking the stillness. "He said he loved me yesterday, you know that," she said, almost laughing. He sent a message, said he missed us. Her fingers clenched around the shawl. And all this time? She stopped. The words refused to finish themselves. Liam didn't answer. He had never seen his mother like this. Small, fragile, like the air itself might shatter her. It terrified him more than the betrayal. When he was younger, she was invincible. The woman who worked double shifts, who fixed everything, who never cried no matter how hard things got. Now, watching her crumble because of someone who didn't deserve her, something inside him hardened into stone. "Mom," he said quietly, "we can go back home tomorrow if you want." She shook her head. "Home?" she whispered. "That house doesn't feel like home anymore." She stared out at the waves. "Everything in it reminds me of him, of her. I don't even know who I am without them." "You're my mom," Liam said simply. "That's who you are." She turned to him then, and for a moment a ghost of a smile flickered through the tears. He said, "You sound like your father used to," she said softly. The mention of David's name made her voice catch, and she looked away again. Liam leaned back, jaw tight. "I'm nothing like him," he muttered. A beat of silence followed, heavy, electric. Outside, the waves crashed against the cliffs, as if echoing the rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. Later that night, when Elena finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by grief, Liam stood by the window, staring at his phone screen. His thumb hovered over the video. He replayed the sound of his mother's voice, trembling and broken. Something about it hollowed him out. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was determined. He opened another app, scrolling through social media, his father's business pages, his sister's modeling account. David was a respected architect, followed by thousands. Sophie was an influencer, posting photos of luxury hotels and family values. Liam almost laughed at the irony. The world adored them both, and they had destroyed the only person who truly loved them. He clicked share, then stopped. Not yet, he thought. Revenge wasn't about chaos. It was about control. He needed a plan. The next morning, Elena woke early, her eyes swollen, her mind foggy. She went through the motions, shower, coffee, suitcase, as if pretending life was still normal. When Liam offered to book flights home, she nodded weakly. But before checking out, she did something unexpected. She sat down at the desk and began writing. "What are you doing?" Liam asked. "I'm writing him a letter," she said flat. "I need to say goodbye properly." She spent an hour pouring her heart out, every memory, every piece of love that now turned to ash. When she was done, she folded the letter neatly, placed it in an envelope, and set it aside. Liam watched quietly, his mind spinning faster with each word she spoke out loud. By afternoon, they were at the airport. Elena looked numb, lost in her thoughts. Liam, on the other hand, was strangely calm. While his mother checked their luggage, he made a few quiet calls. One to his father's assistant, pretending to confirm a meeting schedule. Another to an anonymous contact he'd once helped online, a computer science student who owed him a favor. By the time their plane took off, the first phase of his plan was already in motion. Back in London, the house felt colder than before. Every photo on the wall, family vacations, birthdays, anniversaries, now looked like lies. Elena walked straight to her room, leaving her suitcase by the door. She didn't want to see David. Not yet. She didn't trust herself not to break down again. Liam, however, waited. He sat at the dining table, staring at the clock. 9:10. David would be home soon. He had sent his father a message. "We need to talk. It's important." At 9:30, the door opened. David walked in, looking tired, confused, but relieved. "David, where's your mom? I've been calling her all day." Liam didn't answer immediately. He just looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how much he despised this man he used to admire. "She's resting," he said finally. "You should sit." David frowned, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" Liam placed his phone on the table and pressed play. The recording started. David froze. His color drained. The sound of his own voice, mixed with Sophie's laughter, filled the silent room. He reached for the phone, but Liam slid it out of reach. "You lied to her," Liam said, his voice low and steady. "You humiliated her. You ruined everything. And you think you can just walk back in like nothing happened?" David's hands trembled. "Son, please, you don't understand." "No, you don't understand. I saw what you did. I saw her face when she saw you." The silence stretched until David dropped his gaze. "It was a mistake," he whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Liam leaned forward. "You didn't mean to?" He spoke with her sister. His tone was deadly calm now. "You destroyed our family. You destroyed her." David tried to reach for him, but Liam stood. "Don't," he warned. "You don't get to touch me. Not after this." For the first time, David saw something terrifying in his son's eyes. Not just anger, but purpose. Liam turned toward the hallway. "You'll see what it feels like to lose everything you built. Just like you made her lose everything she loved." And with that, he walked away, leaving his father in silence. Upstairs, Elena stood at the top of the stairs, unseen, tears streaming down her face. She had heard every word. She didn't know what her son was planning, but as she watched him disappear into the darkness of his room, a single thought chilled her to the bone. The boy I raised to forgive has learned how to destroy. The next morning, the house was unnervingly quiet. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, brushing over the framed photos that lined the hallway, a smiling family that no longer existed. Elena hadn't come out of her room, and David sat alone in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee gone cold. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the mug, the sound of the ceramic scraping against the table breaking the silence every few seconds. Liam entered without a word, dressed neatly, his expression unreadable. He went to the fridge, poured himself some juice, and sat opposite his father. The air between them felt heavy, thick with everything left unsaid. "Where's your mom?" David asked finally, his voice low. "She's getting ready," Liam replied, not looking up. "She has an appointment." David nodded, pretending to believe it, but his mind was elsewhere, on the look in Elena's eyes when she'd seen him, on the sound of his sister-in-law's name echoing through the villa. Shame crawled up his spine like a living thing. He wanted to explain, to justify, but how could he? There was no explanation for betrayal, not one that didn't sound hollow. "I need to talk to her, to both of you." "You already said enough, Dad. We heard everything." David flinched at the coldness in his son's voice. "I made a mistake, Liam. I don't expect forgiveness, but—" "It wasn't a mistake," Liam cut in. "You don't accidentally end up in bed with your wife's sister." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, David couldn't breathe. Liam stood, finished his drink, and set the glass down with quiet finality. "You should go stay somewhere else," he said flatly. "Mom doesn't need to see you right now." But when he turned to leave, David's voice cracked behind him. "She's my wife, Liam. This is my home." Liam paused at the doorway. "It was your home," he said softly, not looking back, "until you burned it down." That day marked the beginning of the quiet war inside the Brooks family. Elena barely spoke, moving through the house like a ghost. She avoided the kitchen when David was there, slept with the door locked, and spent most of her days in the garden, trimming plants that were already perfect, just to have something to fix. David, desperate to mend what he'd broken, tried everything. He brought flowers, cooked dinners, left apology notes. But Elena didn't touch them. She didn't even tear them up. She simply left them where they lay, letting them wither on their own, like the love she no longer felt. And Liam watched it all, quietly, intently. He never shouted or accused anymore. Instead, he controlled the atmosphere. He turned down the TV when David walked in. He stopped sitting at the table. He spoke to his father only when necessary, and always in the same measured, emotionless tone. It wasn't anger. It was absence. And that absence was worse than hate. Every small act became a punishment. When David reached out to hug him, Liam stepped back. When David asked how school was, Liam replied, "Fine." When David tried to help with his projects, Liam lied and said they were already done. Slowly, he erased his father from his daily life, a quiet revenge that left David alone in a house full of reminders. One evening, Elena sat by the window, staring at the fading light. Liam walked in with 2 cups of tea, handing her one silently. She smiled faintly. "You don't have to take care of me all the time, you know." "I'm not taking care of you. I'm taking care of what's left of us." She looked at him then, seeing not the boy she'd raised, but someone older, harder. "You shouldn't hate him like this, Liam. Hatred eats you alive." He shook his head. "I don't hate him. I just don't want him to forget what he did." The words hung in the air. Weeks passed, and the silence between father and son grew louder. David began to unravel. He started showing up late for work, distracted and pale. His business partners noticed. He'd always been the man with confidence in his stride, but now he seemed uncertain, as if his foundation had cracked. One afternoon, Elena received a call from one of David's colleagues. "He forgot to attend a client meeting," the man said awkwardly. "Is he all right?" She didn't know how to answer. That night, she found David sitting in the study, staring at an old photo. Their wedding day. His hand trembled as he touched the glass. "I can't sleep," he admitted when she entered. "I close my eyes and see your face, the way you looked that night when you found us." Elena's voice was calm. "Good. Maybe you should keep seeing it." He looked up at her, eyes red. "You can punish me all you want, but please, don't let him hate me. Not Liam." Her lips pressed into a line. "You the one who taught him what love isn't." He broke then, sobbing quietly, head in his hands. But she didn't move closer. She simply turned away. From the hallway, Liam had been listening. He saw his father's shoulders shake, heard his quiet apologies, and for the first time, something inside him faltered. The revenge had been satisfying, watching David crumble, but seeing his mother's pain never fade made him wonder if he'd truly fixed anything. A few days later, he found David outside repairing the fence. "You don't have to," Liam said flatly. "Maybe not, but I need to do something right." Liam hesitated. "You can't fix what's broken," he said quietly. David looked up, his eyes tired. "I know, but I can try to build again, even if it's pieces." For the first time, Liam saw not the betrayer, but a man drowning in guilt. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it made him human again.
That night, Liam went to his mother's room. "He's breaking, Mom. And I don't know if that's what we wanted." Elena looked up from her journal, her eyes glistening. "We wanted truth. We got it. But truth always comes with pain." Liam nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time to stop adding to it." The words lingered in the quiet, heavy and uncertain. The next morning, when David came downstairs, he found a cup of coffee waiting for him on the table. Not from Elena, but from Liam. No note, no smile, just the gesture. But for David, it was enough to start breathing again. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first crack of light after a long, merciless storm.
For a while, peace felt almost possible. The house no longer echoed with silence. There were small sounds again. Cutlery clinking, below hum of conversation, footsteps that didn't stop at the doorway. Elena still kept her distance, but she no longer flinched when David entered a room. Liam had started talking to him, though briefly, and sometimes even sat with him at dinner. It was a fragile calm, like glass, one touch away from breaking, but it was the closest thing to healing they'd had in months. David threw himself into rebuilding his life. He stopped traveling, began teaching part-time at an architecture college, and spent his evenings repairing what could be fixed in the house. Elena noticed he'd stopped wearing his expensive watches and now dressed plainly, almost humbly. It was as if he was trying to strip away everything that had made him arrogant enough to destroy them. And yet, she still couldn't forget. Every time she looked at him, she saw flashes of Sophie's face, the betrayal looping like an unfinished sentence. Then, one rainy afternoon, the phone rang. Elena answered absent-mindedly, expecting a client or a friend, but the voice on the other end froze her blood. "Elena, it's Sophie." Her heart stuttered. For a long moment she couldn't speak. The sound of that voice, soft, familiar, trembling, dragged her straight back to that villa, to that room, to that moment. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "I need to see you," Sophie whispered. "It's important. Please, it's about David." Elena almost hung up, but something in Sophie's voice, fear, desperation, maybe guilt, made her pause. After a long silence, she said coldly, "1 hour, at the cafe near the pier." When she arrived, Sophie was already there, sitting at a corner table, pale and thinner than Elena remembered. Her eyes darted up nervously when Elena sat down. "You shouldn't have called me," Elena said flatly. "I know," Sophie replied, tears gathering. "But you need to hear this. David, he didn't tell you everything." Elena's stomach tightened. "I don't care what excuses he's given you." "It's not an excuse," Sophie interrupted. Her hands shook. "It's about that night. It wasn't what it looked like." Elena almost laughed in disbelief. "You were in his bed, Sophie. Tell me how else it was supposed to look." Sophie swallowed hard. "I went to him that night because I was in trouble. I was being blackmailed by one of his business rivals. They had photos of me and they threatened to ruin me if I didn't get access to David's project files. I panicked. I told him everything. He agreed to help me, but when I broke down crying, I hugged him, and that's when they barged in. The photographer. He was waiting. They made it look like—" Elena's breath caught. "Are you saying someone set you up?" "Yes." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I swear, Lena, I never meant to hurt you. David told me to keep quiet because he didn't want to drag you into the scandal. But the guilt, it's killing me."
For the first time in months, Elena didn't know what to feel. Anger? Relief? Betrayal again, but from another angle? She just sat there, staring at her sister, trying to find truth in her trembling eyes. "Why now?" she finally whispered. "Because the man behind it, he's gone bankrupt. There's no threat anymore. I thought you deserved to know before it's too late." Before she could ask what that meant, Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. "I have to go," she whispered, then fled, leaving her coffee untouched. Elena sat frozen, her mind spinning. Had she been punishing a man for something he hadn't actually done? Had Liam been carrying out vengeance against an innocent father? But no, she had seen them. Hadn't she? Still, Sophie's panic had been real. Too real. That evening, Elena returned home to find David and Liam fixing a leaky faucet together. They looked up, both surprised at her pale face. "Elena?" David asked. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer. Instead, she went to her room, opened her drawer, and pulled out the old letter she'd written in Greece, the goodbye letter. Then she went to the living room and handed it to him. "I want you to read this, and then you'll tell me the truth. All of it." David's hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. He read every word, every line of pain, every accusation, and by the time he finished, tears streaked his face. He looked up at her, eyes red. "I should have told you sooner. Sophie came to me for help. I was trying to protect her and you. But when you walked in," he broke down. "I panicked, and I let you believe the worst because I thought if I denied it, you'd never believe me. I deserved your hatred." Elena's knees nearly gave out. She wanted the truth. Now it hurt more than the lie. All those months of hate, of silence, of revenge, and it had all been built on a misunderstanding orchestrated by someone else's greed. But the real twist came from the doorway. Liam had been standing there, frozen, hearing everything. His face went blank, then twisted with horror. "I ruined you," he whispered to his father. "I punished you for something you didn't do." "Liam," David began, but he was already backing away, shaking his head. "I recorded you. I humiliated you. I made Mom hate you more. His voice broke. He turned to Elena, eyes brimming. "We destroyed him together." Elena reached for him, but he pulled away, tears spilling down his face. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "I became exactly what I hated." David crossed the room and, for the first time in months, put his hands on his son's shoulders. "No, Liam. You were protecting your mother. You did what I should have done. You just didn't know the truth." For a long, trembling moment, the three of them stood there, broken people surrounded by shattered memories. Then Elena whispered, "Whoever set this up, we can't let them keep winning." David nodded slowly. "Then let's rebuild. This time, together." Outside, the rain began to fall harder, tapping against the windows like a quiet applause from the world for the courage it took to face the truth. Inside, something shifted. Pain didn't vanish, but the foundation beneath it began to change. And as Liam watched his parents stand side by side again, he realized that punishment had never been the answer. It was truth that had power. Truth that hurt, but also healed. But deep in his chest, another thought whispered. If truth had the power to destroy and rebuild, then whoever had twisted it first would soon learn that this time, he wasn't done fighting. The camera of the story would fade there, on their reflections in the rain-blurred glass. Three people bound not by betrayal anymore, but the haunting promise that the past was only the beginning.
The rain didn't stop that night. It poured until dawn, washing over the house as though trying to cleanse years of secrets and pain. None of them slept. David sat by the window, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside him. Elena sat opposite, her eyes hollow from exhaustion, and Liam paced the room restless and guilty. Every few minutes, silence fell heavy again. Then one of them would start to speak and stop halfway, as if words couldn't carry the weight of what they'd learned. By sunrise, the storm had passed, but inside, another one was just beginning. Elena was the first to break the silence. "You said one of your rivals was behind it," she said softly. "Do you know who?" David nodded slowly. "I have a name. Marcus Hale. We used to work together, partners on the Seaside project, but when I refused to sell my shares to a foreign investor he was connected with, he turned on me. Sophie told me later that he had pictures, messages. He must have used them to blackmail her." Liam clenched his jaw. "So he's the reason our family fell apart." David's eyes darkened. "Yes, but he won't stop until he ruins everything I have left. And now, that includes both of you." Elena stood up, her voice steady but cold. "Then we stop him first." David looked at her in surprise. For months, she had been distant, detached, barely able to look him in the eye. But now there was fire again, a fire he hadn't seen in years. "Elena, I don't want you involved. You didn't want me involved before, and look where that got us. No more secrets, David. If we're going to fix this, we do it together." Liam nodded fiercely. "Count me in. I know people who can trace emails, recover deleted messages. We'll find proof." And just like that, for the first time since the betrayal, they were united. Not as victims, but as a family, bound by one purpose: the truth. The next few days blurred into sleepless nights and tense mornings. Liam spent hours on his laptop, tracking Sophie's messages, digging through archived company files, tracing phone records. Elena visited Sophie again, this time not with anger, but with a notebook and a calm determination that even Sophie found intimidating. Sophie, pale and tearful, handed over an old flash drive. "He made me copy these documents for him. Project blueprints, client list. He said he just wanted to check your numbers. But when I saw the photos later, I knew he'd planned everything." Elena's fingers tightened around the drive. "And you didn't come forward because he threatened you?" Sophie nodded miserably. "He said he'd release everything, the photos, the fake messages, and destroy you both. I thought staying silent was the only way to protect you." Elena didn't reply. She just turned to leave, and before she did, she said quietly, "You didn't protect us, Sophie. You punished us." Back home, Liam connected the flash drive to his laptop while David watched anxiously. Dozens of files opened, contracts, messages, and hidden folders marked private. And then they found it. A folder named Greece. Inside were time-stamped photographs, doctored emails, and a payment record to a private investigator, the one who had taken the photo that shattered their lives. Liam's voice shook with anger. He paid someone to destroy us. David took a deep breath. "We'll take this to the police." But Elena, calm and steady, said something that made them both stop. "Not yet. He ruined our lives publicly, remember? If we go to the police now, it'll take months. He'll hide, deny, and twist the story again. We'll expose him the same way he exposed us, publicly, with truth." David hesitated. "You mean go to the press?" "No," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I mean, we tell our story, all of it, on record, together." For a long moment, no one spoke.
Then David nodded slowly. If this is how we heal, then yes, together. A week later, the interview aired. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, honest, raw. Elena spoke first, explaining the night she walked in on Sophie and David, the months of pain, the revenge, the silence. David followed, admitting his fear, his guilt, and his cowardice in hiding the truth. Liam ended it, his voice trembling as he said, I hated my father for something he didn't do. I learned too late that truth can destroy, but lies destroy faster. The clip spread online like wildfire. Comments flooded in, some disbelieving, some sympathetic, many deeply moved. But the impact was undeniable. And Marcus Hale, within days, anonymous sources leaked that his company was under investigation for fraud. Investors pulled out, partners distanced themselves. The man who had tried to destroy David's name now watched his own empire crumble in the same public eye that had once condemned the wrong man. Justice, poetic and slow, had finally begun to turn. That evening, after the storm of attention began to fade, the three of them sat on the porch, in silence. The air smelled of sea salt and wet earth. Elena leaned back, eyes half closed. You know, she said softly, for the first time in years, this house doesn't feel heavy anymore. David smiled faintly. Because we stopped pretending. We faced it. Liam looked out at the waves crashing in the distance. Do you think people can really forgive after all that? His father thought for a moment. Forgiveness isn't a moment, son. It's a decision you make every day. Some days you can, some days you can't, but you keep trying. Elena turned to him, her gaze softer now. And trust? He looked back at her, pain and gratitude mingling in his eyes. That one we'll rebuild, brick by brick. There was a long silence. Then Liam smiled faintly. Then I guess we start tomorrow. The three of them sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The same place that had once been their battlefield had become, slowly, their beginning again. But deep inside, Elena knew this wasn't the end. It was the calm after a storm. And sometimes, calm hides the quiet sound of another wave approaching. But for now, they deserve this peace. And as the camera fades out, you can almost hear the unspoken words between them. We survived the lie. Now we'll live the truth.
For a brief, fragile moment, peace seemed possible. Days passed without confrontation, and the air in the Sterling home, once thick with grief and suspicion, began to feel breathable again. Liam had started attending university classes in person, determined to make up for the semester he'd skipped. Elena began painting again, after years of leaving her brushes dry, and David spent his mornings in the garden, tending the same roses he once forgot existed. It wasn't perfect, but it was normal. Yet peace rarely lasts long when built on unfinished truths. One afternoon, as the autumn sun poured through the living room window, Liam received an email. The subject line was short. You think it's over? He frowned, opening it. Inside was a single attachment, a video file titled The Real Story. For a second, he thought it was spam, but then curiosity and a deep unease made him click play. The video began with shaky footage. Marcus Hale sitting at a desk, smirking into the camera. David Sterling wants you all to believe he's a victim, that I framed him, that I blackmailed his family. But here's what he didn't tell you. Liam's heart sunk as Marcus leaned forward. 18 years ago, before he married Elena, he had a fiancée, my sister, Natalie Hale. She died before the wedding, in a car crash David was driving. He walked away, she didn't, and he covered it up, called it an accident. My sister never got justice. So tell me again who the real villain is. The screen went black. Liam sat frozen, the air knocked out of his lungs. He replayed the video twice, each time feeling his pulse quicken. It couldn't be true. His father? A killer? He ran to the garden, voice breaking. Dad, you need to see this. David looked up startled as Liam shoved the phone into his hands. The moment David saw Marcus's face, his own turned pale. He didn't speak until the video ended, and even then, his voice trembled. I was going to tell you one day. I just didn't know how. Elena, who had been watching from the doorway, froze. Tell us what, David? He looked at her, eyes filled with an old, unhealed pain. It was raining that night. Natalie and I had an argument on the highway. She found out about you, that I'd fallen in love with you before our engagement ended. She was driving too fast. I grabbed the wheel to stop her. The car spun out. She didn't make it. I did. Her brother Marcus never forgave me. The silence that followed was unbearable. Elena stepped back slowly, her face unreadable. So, he's not lying? No, David said quietly. He's twisting the truth. It wasn't accident. I didn't kill her. But I never faced the guilt properly. I buried it, and it followed me all these years. Liam's hands shook. You said we'd built our lives on honesty, Dad. I know, David said, his voice breaking. But I was afraid you'd see me the way Marcus does, as a monster. Elena turned away, tears streaming silently. Every time I think we've reached the bottom, David, there's always another layer beneath it. The video spread within hours. Marcus had uploaded it to multiple social platforms, complete with fabricated evidence, old photos, a doctored police report, even a false witness statement. Comments flooded in, headlines exploded. The truth behind the Sterling scandal, David Sterling's deadly past. Reporters camped outside their home. Sponsors dropped out of David's business contracts. Even clients who had supported him before began to pull away. This time, it wasn't just about infidelity or family betrayal. It was murder. Liam couldn't take it anymore. One night, he stormed into his father's office. You need to fight back. Tell them the real story. If you don't, he wins again. David looked exhausted. I've already tried. The police report was sealed. There's no proof that he forged anything, only my word against his. Then we'll find proof, Liam said, determination flaring again. There has to be something, dash cam footage, a mechanic's record, anything. Elena, standing quietly by the doorway, finally spoke. There was one person who knew the truth. Who? David asked. She met his gaze. Your mother. You told her everything that night, didn't you? David hesitated, then nodded slowly. She was the only one who believed me. Then we go to her, now. The next morning, they drove for hours through the countryside, the silence heavy with unspoken fear. David's mother, Margaret Sterling, lived in a small coastal town where she'd retired years ago. When she opened the door and saw them, her eyes filled with both surprise and sadness. Marcus's lies finally caught up with you, didn't they?
she said softly, before they even spoke. Inside, over tea, she opened a small box from the top shelf of her cabinet. Inside was an old, cracked USB drive. I kept this for the day you'd need it. The car had a maintenance recorder, a digital black box, like airplanes do. I copied the data before the insurance company deleted it. It proves you weren't driving when the crash happened. Natalie was. David stared at her, tears glistening in his eyes. Mom, you saved this all these years? I knew Marcus would never stop until he saw you destroyed. He's been obsessed since that night. Liam carefully plugged the drive into his laptop. The data was fragmented but recoverable. There it was, the exact speed, steering input, and airbag activation. Natalie was the driver. David's seatbelt was fastened on the passenger side. Elena exhaled shakily. This could clear everything. Liam nodded. If we release this, Marcus is finished. David took her hand gently. No, we don't release it for revenge. We release it for peace. That night, they uploaded the data with an official police statement. Within 24 hours, forensic experts verified the authenticity. The headlines flipped again. Evidence clears David Sterling of Hale accident. Marcus Hale was arrested the next week for falsifying evidence and obstruction of justice. But even as justice finally arrived, Elena knew something deeper had changed. She watched her husband standing at the edge of the shore, staring at the horizon. His eyes looked lighter now, but older too, as though freedom came at the cost of innocence. Liam joined her side, whispering, "Do you think he'll ever forgive himself?" She smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but at least now we all know the truth." The camera pans out, waves crashing against the rocks, families standing together again, not perfect, but whole. Because sometimes the truth doesn't heal, it humbles. And in that humility, love quietly begins again.
Weeks passed since Marcus Hale's arrest, yet the echoes of his actions lingered in the Sterling household, like the faint smell of smoke after a fire. The chaos had ended, but silence brought its own kind of torment, a silence filled with reflection, guilt, and slow healing. Elena found herself waking early each morning, drawn to the kitchen window where sunlight spilled across the garden. David was usually outside, kneeling by the rose bushes, trimming the branches that had grown wild during their months of turmoil. Every snip of his shears seemed like a small act of penance, cutting away what was dead so something new could bloom. Liam often joined him, no longer the angry boy he had been months ago, but not yet the man he wanted to become. The storm had matured him, stripped away his arrogance, his certainty that every truth was black or white. He still carried guilt for punishing his father so cruelly, but now there was understanding in his eyes. Sometimes love meant protecting, and sometimes it meant questioning, but both could coexist in the same heart. Life was beginning to look like life again. The headlines faded, the public's interest moved on to new scandals, and peace, cautious but real, began to settle over their lives. Until the letter arrived. It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when Elena opened the mailbox and found a thick, cream-colored envelope addressed simply to the Sterlings. There was no return address, but the handwriting, bold, angular, familiar, sent a chill racing through her veins. She carried it into the living room where David and Liam were seated, their laptops open. "It's from Marcus," she whispered. David froze, staring at the envelope as though it were a live wire. "He's still in custody. How could he—" "Prison letters go through review," Liam said quietly. "He must have written it before he was transferred." For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Elena opened the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was steady, but the words were anything but calm.
To the family I destroyed. I know you hate me, and you should. I've spent years hating David for what happened to Natalie. Hatred became my purpose, my identity, the reason I woke up each day. But when I saw my reflection in the courtroom glass yesterday, I realized something. I've become the monster I accused him of being. You took everything from me, or so I thought. But now I understand. I gave it all away the moment I chose vengeance over the truth. The truth is, I never hated David for killing Natalie. I hated him because she loved him till her last breath. I saw the way she looked at him, even when she was broken, and deep down, I envied that kind of love. I wanted someone to look at me that way. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's anything I can offer, it's this: a confession. Before Natalie died, she left a voice message for me. I never shared it. I'm enclosing it now. Marcus Hale. A small flash drive fell from the envelope, clattering softly on the table. Liam's hands trembled as he picked it up and inserted it into his laptop. For a moment, there was only static. Then a woman's voice, faint but clear, filled the room. Marcus, if you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. Please don't blame David. He tried to save me. I was angry, reckless. I wanted to hurt him for loving someone else, but it wasn't his fault. He didn't want this. He was trying to stop me. Please don't destroy him from my mistake. I love you, little brother. Don't let my love become your curse. The message ended with a soft breath, like the last sigh before peace. Elena covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. David sat perfectly still, his shoulders trembling, eyes shut tight as the sound of Natalie's voice, the ghost of a past he'd carried like a chain, washed over him. Liam whispered, "She forgave you, all this time." David nodded slowly. "But I couldn't forgive myself. I think that's why everything fell apart. I was living with the guilt I didn't deserve and punishing the people who loved me most." Elena reached across the table, taking his hand. For the first time in years, his grip didn't feel desperate or heavy. It felt steady. That evening, they walked together along the shore near their home. The sky was painted in gold and violet, the sea calm, reflecting the last light of day. Liam skipped a stone across the water. "So, what happens now?" David smiled faintly. "Now, we live. That's punishment enough, and mercy too." Elena looked at her husband, her son, and the endless ocean before them. Maybe life isn't about avoiding storms. Maybe it's about learning to dance in the rain after they pass. David chuckled softly, the sound warm for the first time in years. "That sounds like something your mother used to say." Liam grinned. "Then she's finally back." They walked in silence, letting the wind carry away the last pieces of the past. Behind them, the waves erased their footprints one by one, a reminder that even the deepest scars can fade when love remains. Later that night, after Liam had gone to bed, David found Elena sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. He sat beside her, their shoulders brushing lightly. "Do you ever think we'll stop being haunted by what happened?" he asked quietly. She thought for a moment. "Maybe not completely, but maybe that's okay. Ghosts don't always come to scare us. Sometimes they come to remind us what we've survived." He smiled, eyes glistening. "You always know how to make pain sound poetic." "That's because I had to. Otherwise, it would have swallowed me." David took her hand again. "Thank you for not giving up on me, or on us." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "We all broke, David, but we also learned how to rebuild." The camera slowly pulls back, the soft glow of the porch light, the rhythmic sound of the ocean, the quiet heartbeat of forgiveness. And just before the screen fades to black, Liam's voice echoes softly in narration. Sometimes punishment doesn't come from anger, it comes from truth. And sometimes love isn't the absence of pain, it's what survives it. Fade out.
A full year had passed since the chaos that nearly destroyed the Sterling family. Seasons had changed quietly, the harsh winds of winter had softened into spring, and for the first time in years, the house felt like a home again. The garden, once overgrown and forgotten, now bloomed in rich color. Roses, tulips, and lavender lined the white stone path that led to the porch. Elena loved to tend the flowers in the morning, often humming softly as she worked, the same melody she used to sing to Liam when he was a child. David had built her a small wooden bench there, hand-carved with a single word across the backrest: renewed. Inside the house, the air felt lighter. The walls, once echoing with silence and accusation, now carried laughter, quiet conversations, and even the occasional teasing between father and son. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Liam had changed the most. Gone was the impulsive teenager who once acted out of anger and pride. At 21, he had matured, wiser, steadier, and more compassionate. He had started volunteering at a rehabilitation center, helping teens struggling with guilt, loss, or broken homes. If I can help even one person avoid the mistakes I made, then maybe everything we went through will mean something, he often said. His relationship with his father had transformed too. Every Sunday morning, they met at the local cafe, just the two of them, for coffee and long talks. Sometimes they discussed business and life. Other times they sat quietly, watching the world go by. Those silences weren't awkward anymore. They were healing. One afternoon, Elena stood in the kitchen scrolling through her email when she found something unexpected, a message from the Georgia Arts Foundation. She opened it curiously and gasped. "Dear Mrs. Sterling, your recent painting, The Storm That Bloomed, has been selected for exhibition at our annual showcase. We would be honored if you could attend and share your story with our audience." Tears welled in her eyes as she read the words again. It had been years since she submitted anything to a gallery. That painting, a swirling mix of gray skies and red flowers, had been her therapy after everything fell apart. She had painted it one night after finding Marcus's letter, using art to say everything her heart couldn't put into words. When she told David and Liam, both of them broke into wide smiles. "That's incredible, Mom," Liam said, hugging her tightly. David's voice was warm and proud. "You deserve this, Elena. You gave us all the strength to survive that storm. Now, the world gets to see it too." Elena smiled softly. Maybe it's time to stop surviving and start living. The exhibition night arrived under a cool summer breeze. The gallery was filled with soft music, dim lights, and rows of paintings that told stories of loss, love, and rebirth. But when the guests stopped before Elena's piece, silence often followed, the kind that comes not from confusion, but from being deeply moved. The painting glowed under the soft spotlight, a fractured family standing beneath a storm, their shadows long and heavy, yet from the cracks of the ground, small red flowers bloomed towards the light. When Elena was invited to speak, her voice trembled slightly at first, but steadied as she looked out into the crowd. "This painting isn't just mine. It's about what happens when truth breaks us, and how love, if we let it, can build us again. My husband and my son are here tonight. A year ago, I didn't think we'd even share the same room again. But sometimes grace finds you in the wreckage." The audience broke into quiet applause. David's eyes glistened as he watched her, proud, humbled, and grateful. Liam, filming on his phone, whispered, "You did it, Mom." She smiled through her tears. "We did."
After the event, as they walked back to the car under the glow of city lights, they passed a small cafe window where a TV played a news segment. David stopped when he saw a familiar name flash across the screen. Marcus Hale has been granted parole after showing consistent remorse and good behavior during his sentence. Sources close to him say he plans to relocate abroad and start a new life. Elena froze. Do you think he'll reach out? David shook his head slowly. I don't know. But if he does, I hope it's not for revenge, but for peace. Liam slipped his hands into his pockets, looking thoughtful. Maybe people really can change. Elena nodded. We did. Why not him? They stood there for a moment, watching the quiet flicker of the TV through the glass, then continued walking hand in hand, their steps steady, their hearts no longer weighed down by fear. That night, as they returned home, a soft rain began to fall, gentle, not stormy. Elena stepped outside onto the porch, letting the drops touch her face. The air smelled like wet roses. Behind her, David joined her quietly, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Do you remember the first night it rained after everything? You said maybe storms aren't meant to destroy us, but to teach us how to dance. Elena smiled, eyes glistening. Looks like we finally learned the steps. Liam joined them, standing beside their parents as thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, not frightening this time, just a heartbeat of the sky. He whispered, You know what's funny? I used to think punishment was about revenge. Now I think it's about understanding. David placed a hand on his son's shoulder. And love is about forgiveness, not for others, but for ourselves. The three of them stood together, bathed in the soft silver glow of the rain. The camera slowly pans upward, capturing their silhouettes against the night sky. One family, broken once, now whole again. As the scene fades to black, a single line appears across the screen, a quiet whisper to the audience. The storm may test your home, but it can never destroy its foundation if love still lives inside.
It was late September when the letter arrived. The morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, drawing golden lines across the kitchen table. Elena was sipping her tea, lost in the quiet rhythm of her new life, when she noticed the envelope resting near the vase of fresh lilies. Her name was written in a handwriting she hadn't seen in years, clean, careful, and full of ghosts. Marcus Hale. Her heart gave a small, uncertain tremor. She sat still for a long moment, staring at it, not out of fear, but from the weight of everything that name once carried. Eventually, she took a deep breath and tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, and a photograph. The letter was short, handwritten in the same familiar strokes she remembered from their childhood notes. Elena, by the time you read this, I'll already be far from the city. I was granted parole last month. I didn't write sooner because I wasn't sure if I deserved to reach out at all. I've spent every day of my sentence thinking about what I did, not just to you, but to your family. I broke something pure. I destroyed the only people who ever saw me as more than my mistakes. There isn't a day I don't wish I could take it back. I know forgiveness isn't something I can ask for. I just want you to know I finally understand what love means. It's not desire. It's not possession. It's the courage to want peace for someone even if you can never have them in your life again. David doesn't owe me anything, but I hope he knows I admired his strength. And tell Liam, he taught me the hardest lesson of all, that facing the truth is braver than running from it. I've started working at a community center overseas, helping families rebuild after conflict. Maybe this is how I'll spend the rest of my life, trying to rebuild what I once destroyed.
Thank you for giving me a reason to change, even if it came from pain. Marcus. Elena read the letter twice before noticing the photograph tucked behind it. Marcus standing beside a group of children, smiling softly, a paintbrush in hand, murals blooming behind him. He looked older, gentler, his eyes carrying a quiet peace that she had never seen before. She didn't cry, she didn't feel anger either, just a strange, tender stillness. After a long pause, she whispered to herself, maybe the storm really did change us all. When David came home that evening, she handed him the letter. He read it silently, his jaw tightening at first, then relaxing as he reached the final lines. When he finished, he placed the paper down carefully, as if setting down something fragile. He's not the same man anymore, Elena said softly. No, David agreed. Neither are we. Liam came in moments later, sweaty from basketball practice, laughter still clinging to his voice. When he saw his parents' serious faces, he frowned. What's wrong? Elena handed him the photo. Liam looked at it for a long moment, eyes narrowing in recognition. Marcus? Yes, David said. He sent us a letter. Liam exhaled deeply and leaned against the counter. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then he said, almost to himself, I used to think I hated him. I wanted him to suffer, to lose everything like we did. But looking at this, he looks free, not from prison, from himself. David placed a hand on his son's shoulder. That's what real punishment does. Not destroy you, but make you face who you are. Liam nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Then maybe we can finally let go too. That night, they sat together in the garden, the same spot where everything had once fallen apart, but now it was quiet, peaceful. The moon hung low and golden, its light reflecting off the petals of the roses Elena had planted months ago. They placed Marcus's letter in a small wooden box, along with a copy of Elena's painting, The Storm That Bloomed. Then Liam spoke quietly, almost like a prayer. We don't bury this in anger, he said. We bury it in gratitude for the lessons that hurt but healed us. Elena and David both nodded, tears glimmering in their eyes. Together, they dug a small patch of earth beneath the blooming red flowers and lowered the box in gently. Elena whispered, May peace grow where pain once lived. The family sat there in silence as the wind rustled softly through the leaves, carrying away the last traces of the past. A few days later, Liam uploaded a short video on his channel, a montage of old family footage, silent moments, and slow pans across his mother's art, ending with a voiceover that spoke directly to the heart. People think betrayal ends everything, that once trust is broken, it can never be rebuilt. But sometimes what breaks us also shows us who we are. My family didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we learned to be honest, even when the truth hurt. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing peace over revenge. It's realizing that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are also the ones who teach us how to love right. And if you're watching this, wondering if your story can heal, it can. Storms don't destroy homes built with love. They test them. And when the clouds finally clear, you'll see you were stronger than you ever thought. The video ended on a still frame of the garden under the moonlight, the faint outline of three figures sitting together, laughing softly as rain began to fall once more, not in fury, but as a quiet blessing. The screen faded to black. The title appeared in elegant white letters. My son punished my husband when we caught him in bed with my sister. A story not about revenge, but redemption. The soft piano score lingered for a few seconds before silence took over. And in that silence, every viewer could feel it. The ache, the release, the reminder that love, even when shattered, can still be rebuilt.
The house no longer echoed with arguments or tears. It was strange, almost peaceful, how silence could feel so heavy and yet so healing at the same time. Months had passed since Marcus's letter arrived, and life had slowly begun to take shape again. The walls that once held whispers of betrayal were now filled with laughter, music, and the comforting noise of an ordinary, imperfect family trying to live again. Elena often stood by the kitchen window in the mornings, watching the sunlight creep through the trees. It felt like watching time itself learning to forgive. The pain had not vanished, it never truly does, but it had softened around the edges, turning into something gentler, something survivable. Sometimes she still thought about the night she and Liam stood frozen in that villa doorway, staring at a truth so cruel it seemed unreal. That memory would never fade, but with time, she stopped seeing it as the night her family ended and started seeing it as the night they began to rebuild. Liam had changed more than anyone. The boy who once hid behind anger had transformed into a young man whose strength came from empathy. His digital content had taken off, not for drama, not for sensationalism, but for raw honesty. Millions of people watched as he spoke about resilience, family, and forgiveness, his calm voice carrying a kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving heartbreak. He never mentioned names, he never told his audience who had betrayed whom, but he told the truth about pain, how it isolates, how it consumes, and how it can eventually teach. I used to think revenge would heal me, he said in one of his final videos of the year. But revenge is just pain wearing a different mask. It doesn't fix anything, it only spreads the wound. What saved me wasn't getting even, it was understanding. And when I finally stopped trying to destroy what hurt me, I began to rebuild what mattered. That clip went viral, 12 million views in 3 days. And in every comment, people shared their own stories of betrayal, loss, and quiet survival. Liam read them all. He didn't respond to most, but he smiled, knowing that his pain had somehow become medicine for others. David, too, had become a different man. The affair had cost him everything he once took for granted, his image, his peace, his family's trust. But in losing all of that, he found something else: humility. He spent months in therapy, in silence, and then volunteering at a youth shelter, helping kids who'd been abandoned by their parents. For the first time in his life, he wasn't building homes out of bricks, he was helping rebuild lives. And though his marriage would never return to what it once was, Elena could see that he was trying, not through grand gestures, but through consistency. Every morning he showed up. Every evening he helped with dinner. Every Sunday he visited his mother and called his son just to say, "How's your heart today?" That, she realized, was the only kind of apology that mattered. One lived, not spoken. One evening, as rain began to fall, gentle, rhythmic, almost nostalgic, Elena, David, and Liam found themselves sitting together again on the porch. No scripts, no tension, just quiet. Liam rested his head on his mother's shoulder. David sat beside them, his hands wrapped around a cup of tea. The garden shimmered in the rain, the roses glistening like small lanterns in the dark. For a long time, nobody said a word. Then Elena whispered, "Do you think pain ever really leaves?" Liam thought for a moment before replying, "Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it just learns to live with us, like an old scar that reminds us we healed. David nodded slowly. And maybe that's enough. Elena smiled faintly. For the first time, she realized that survival wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about accepting it and still choosing love anyway. Later that night, as she walked past Liam's room, she found him editing his next video. On the screen was a single quote he was preparing to narrate, his closing message to his viewers. He said softly into the microphone, "We all have a storm. Sometimes it comes from betrayal, sometimes from loss, sometimes from the people we trusted most. But storms don't just break things, they clear the path. They strip away what isn't real so we can finally see what is. I thought my story was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about love and how it survives even when everything else falls apart." Elena stood there silently, her eyes glistening, her heart heavy yet full. When Liam finished recording, he turned and saw her in the doorway. "Good?" he asked with a small grin. She nodded, her voice catching. "Perfect." That video became his most shared story yet, not because it was scandalous, but because it was real. Viewers said they cried. Others said it gave them courage to forgive. A few said it made them call someone they hadn't spoken to in years. And as the comments flooded in, Elena realized that her son, the same boy who once shattered at the sight of betrayal, had grown into the kind of man who could turn pain into purpose. The last shot of the video was simple, a slow zoom out of the house under a calm night sky, rain softly falling on the garden. Text appeared across the screen. "The people who hurt us shape us, but the way we heal, that's who we truly are." The music swelled, gentle piano, then silence. Then a final line faded in. "My son punished my husband when we caught him in bed with my sister, but in the end, forgiveness was the greatest punishment of all." And with that, the story ended, not with vengeance, not with fury, but with quiet peace. Because sometimes the real victory isn't making others suffer for what they've done. It's finding a way to live again, even after the storm.